It all started with the fact that the main character, when he came to his senses, found himself in a novel about an unusual world, the Taoist and the beast, in the body of a tiger. Sometime later, two men found a dog that had been killed by someone. One man noticed that someone had killed the dog without a single bark, and had walked away from there without leaving a trace, without even being caught in a trap. And then the same man noticed that this was clearly not an ordinary animal. Suddenly, two other men ran up to those two men and said that the noose and the trap were also in place. The men said that the traps were definitely set correctly, which meant the animal must have been injured, but there was not a single trace. Turning to their boss, the very first man said that this was the first time he had encountered such a thing, and that they had better leave here quickly. Then their boss shouted for everyone to shut up, because they were preventing him from thinking. The man began to think that if his instincts were not deceiving him, then they were trapped, and if they moved now, this beast could attack them, but they could not remain inactive either. After thinking for a moment, the man said that they would leave from here, and commanded that the others leave the traps, which they would pick up tomorrow, and also that they should stick together until they reached the valley. The boss wanted to add that the guys shouldn't act rashly, but before he could finish speaking, a man suddenly fell to the ground. Someone's huge red paw pinned the man to the ground, and the claws left deep wounds on his chest. As it turned out, it was a huge tiger, which, a little later, threw the man to the side with great force. The men did not expect this beast to appear at all. Their leader could not load his crossbow because his hands were shaking so much from fear. Suddenly, with its mouth wide open, the tiger rushed straight at the man, and then the beast began to wave its paws with sharp claws. The man with the severed arm, but still alive, said that they had disturbed someone who shouldn't have been touched. But the tiger was not going to leave anyone alive and attack the last survivor. The next day, in some village, someone asked about what they say, that today is that day. A man and a woman were sitting at the table and eating dinner. One of them asked again. The other answered that today was the day of the offering for the owner of the mountain. The man, taking a bite of food, replied that it was so, and it would be tonight. The woman asked who it would be this time, to which the man asked if she knew the local nobleman, and then said that it would be one of his slaves. And then he added that this slave was still small, but her hair was white and her eyes were blue, just like a ghost. Night fell. The nobleman stood on the street, waiting for something, when suddenly someone called out to him. As it turned out, it was an old woman, and next to her stood a little girl covered with clothes. The gentleman answered the old woman that she was a good girl for bringing the girl, and now she could go, and then added, already turning to the girl, that she should follow him. The girl, clutching the clothes that covered her in her hands, did not move from the spot. Then the man shouted at her and said that he told her to follow him, and only then did the girl come to her senses. The nobleman led the girl to the palanquin, where several men were already standing, greeting the nobleman. When the girl sat down in the palanquin, the men lifted it up and carried it somewhere, and the nobleman stood and watched, seeing them off. Meanwhile, the girl's hands were shaking very badly. The men carried this palanquin somewhere further and further into the mountains. Having left him for some time, I realized that they immediately, as if afraid of something, ran back. For a while nothing happened. The palanquin just stood on the ground. Then the girl decided to get out of it. When she got out of it, the girl immediately ran in some direction. When she reached the cave, the girl stopped and exclaimed about how big the cave was. But then, remembering something, she immediately fell silent and covered her mouth with her hand. The girl thought to herself that she would soon meet the master of the mountain, which meant she had to behave with dignity so that he wouldn't get angry. She thought that she was the one who would become the bride of the master of the mountain. Making her way deeper into the cave, the girl shook with fear and thought about how dark it was here. Suddenly someone asked her who she was, and the girl froze with tears in her eyes. Trying to go further, the girl's legs gave way and she fell to the ground, and her cloak flew off. Suddenly someone asked the girl even louder who she was, while the girl was shaking with fear. The girl stuttered and wanted to answer, but she couldn't say it properly. But after a little while, and gathering her courage, she clearly answered that she was the one who would henceforth honor him as her husband, and said that her name was Chelsea. This time the tiger did not answer. The girl blushed a little and covered her mouth with her hand, thinking that she had probably said too much. Suddenly, a huge tiger emerged from the depths of the cave. The girl stood up abruptly and screamed that she had been told that the first time always hurts, but they told her to endure it if she wanted to become a bride. And then, putting her hand on her chest, she said that she belonged entirely to him, her husband. Then the tiger screamed for Chelsea to get out of there, and the girl's hair and dress began to flutter from the scream. The tiger said that he wasn't interested in all the nonsense the girl had just said, causing the girl to freeze with a blank expression on her face. And suddenly she burst into tears. The beast asked loudly why she had suddenly started crying, but the girl was too busy sobbing to answer. The tiger tried again to tell the girl to get out, but she immediately burst into tears even more than before. This made the beast fall to the ground, covering his head with his paw and thinking about how much he hated crying. Then, more calmly, the tiger again tried to ask what had happened and why she was crying, but the girl continued to sob loudly and did not answer. Suddenly, having calmed down a little, she answered intermittently that she was his fiancée, and he was throwing her out. Wiping away the girl's tears with his claw, the tiger sighed and replied that since it was dark outside, he would allow her to spend the night here. Then the girl burst into tears again and began screaming, which shocked the beast. Snuggling up to the tiger's paw, Chelsea looked up at the beast with a smile on her face, leaving snot on its fur. The next morning the girl lay on the tiger's fur and snored quietly. The beast, meanwhile, was no longer sleeping, and was thinking about how long this girl had been sleeping. And then, remembering the appearance of this girl, white hair, blue eyes, he noted that there are very few people in the world with such an appearance, and noticed that she had leukemia. The tiger thought that the girl was cursed by unknown creatures, and she also had the power of one of them, and now this little child would become a terrible creature, over whom everyone would tremble with fear. And then he thought about the fact that the blood of these white-blooded people is an elixir that has no equal, and he added that now everyone would come for her, and that she was more dangerous than he thought, which meant that she couldn't be left. Suddenly the girl woke up. Still half asleep, she stroked the tiger and asked him if he was awake. Suddenly blushing a little and becoming more animated, Chelsea said that they had spent the night together, which meant that she was now officially his fiancée. Suddenly the tiger stood up abruptly, causing the girl to fall to the ground, and told her that since the sun had already risen, she should go back to her home. The girl replied that she could not, because she had been told that if she did not become his bride, she would be punished. The tiger, surprised, asked the girl who would punish her, and who dared to do it, to which the girl replied that it was the nobleman and his son. The beast, hearing this, thought that those bandits were sent by the same people, and it turns out that this little girl is their sacrifice for him. Chelsea begged the tiger not to leave her, and said that she was very good at washing and eating absolutely everything, and that she was generally good at everything, and therefore he should not leave her. The beast thought that if he sent the girl back to the village, she would be immediately thrown out and die. Not wanting to come to this conclusion, the tiger thought about what he should do. Having come up with an idea, he thought about sending her to another village, and if he also gave her some useful herbs, then perhaps she would survive. Tiger led Chelsea to the exit of the cave, holding some things in his teeth. Opening his mouth, he threw some roots and a piece of cloth onto the ground. After looking at these things, the girl immediately asked what they were. The beast replied that he gives her ginseng, and she takes it and goes, without returning to her own, to another village. The girl tries to object, saying that she is his fiancée. Frightened, the tiger tells the girl to stop talking like that, because how can he be her husband, and then adds that she should not say anything unnecessary and do as he tells her. And then he collects ginseng and a blanket with his tail, and says that if she sells this root, she will be able to buy a small house and even have some left over. The tiger then gives these things into Chelsea's hands, to which she says that she doesn't need anything, and that only him is enough. But then the beast turns around threateningly and tells the girl to stop making him angry, and then he goes into the cave, thinking that he is the one who is the master of the mountain, and therefore is doomed to be alone forever. But then the girl calls out to the beast, to which he tells her to get out of here already. But Chelsea says she can't go down and doesn't know where the other village is. The beast sighs, thinking that he can help, because he is basically not busy. And then he presses his head to the ground and tells the girl to sit on him. Chelsea resolutely ties the blanket containing the ginseng around her chest, and then she starts to climb up the tiger's face, which makes him a little puzzled, and asks if she can do it easier, but he himself thinks that she could have climbed up from the side. Having climbed onto the tiger's head, the girl turns her head and suddenly her eyes widen. As it turned out, she saw incredibly beautiful mountains and forests from above. Patting the tiger on the head, Chelsea says that she is probably the first person to sit on the neck of a ferocious tiger like this, which makes him angry. And then she joyfully closes her eyes, points her finger forward, and shouts for the beast to run as fast as possible, calling him her husband. And then the tiger pushed off and jumped forward, telling the girl to stop calling him husband. Having gone down a little lower, the tiger said that there was already a village over there. Chelsea, meanwhile, was pulling the tiger's ears, and he asked her to stop doing it because it hurt him. The girl immediately let go of his ears and apologized. And then she suddenly hugged the beast by the neck. In response, the tiger told her not to stick to him and to come down faster. In response, the girl immediately agreed, let go of the tiger and slid down his paw. As he walked back into the cave, the tiger said out loud that although he was a little interested, she had already become boring to him, and therefore they should never see each other again. Then Chelsea quickly grabbed the beast's tail and asked him where he was going. In response, the tiger asked if the girl didn't know what a sin it was to hold animals by their tails. The girl replied that she knew about it, but he was leaving his bride, to which the beast replied that she was not his bride at all. Continuing to pull the tiger's tail, Chelsea reminded him that they had spent the night together, and therefore she was his fiancée. In response, the tiger said that the girl was completely crazy, and asked how a tiger and a human could get married, and whether she understood what it meant to spend the night, because she was babbling all sorts of things. The girl screamed that despite everything she had married him, so he should be responsible for her. Wondering where the little girl got such strength from, the tiger said that he even got her ginseng, which she could sell and live without denying herself anything. Chelsea abruptly threw the bag of ginseng onto the ground and shouted that she didn't want it that way, and that if the tiger wasn't around, she didn't need this useless herb. The beast asked himself whether the girl could imagine how expensive this useless grass was, and then he thought that it would not end like this, which meant that even though he did not want to do it, he would have to. Worried that his tail would fall off, the tiger suggested that the girl go to the village to sell this ginseng, and then return back, thereby paying for the dowry. The girl's mind seized upon the word dowry, and her eyes sparkled, and she herself blushed. Joyfully picking up a ginseng wrapped in cloth from the ground, she told the beast not to go anywhere, because she would return quickly. The tiger agreed with this and began to warn the girl. He told her not to hurry too much, but the girl ran along the road as fast as she could. He then added that she should be careful, and Chelsea immediately fell to the ground. But a second later she stood up and walked on, disappearing into the distance. Near one of the houses in the village, near a fire on which stood a kettle, an old man sat and fanned the fire with the help of a fan. Chelsea walked up to him and said that she had come to sell him something. When the old man looked at the girl, he immediately caught the gaze of blue eyes, and then the old man jumped away from the girl with a scream. But as he moved away, his scream became quieter. The man said to himself that he thought it was a ghost, and then, clearing his throat, asked what the girl had brought him. The girl took ginseng out of the cloth and gave it to the old man, who began to look at it closely. Realizing that it was ginseng, the old man loudly asked Chelsea where she found it, to which the girl replied that her husband gave it to her, and the man asked again, and the girl replied that she had to sell it to pay for her dowry. Suddenly something awakened in the old man, and he thought that these roots looked to be about 300 years old, and this child clearly did not know their value and looked very stupid, which meant that he could easily deceive her and get this root for a couple of coins. But suddenly he came to his senses and sighed, thinking how base it was that he had thought of deceiving a child. And then the old man said that he could not buy such an expensive product, and advised her to go to the house of a local rich man, and said that she should definitely say that he conveyed that this was real ginseng. In response, Chelsea bowed low to the old man, thanking him. Meanwhile, eating meat in his cave, the tiger was thinking out loud that nothing could compare to the emotion of tearing meat from a bone alone. The beast said that the world is always like this, namely that the fault lies with the one who was deceived, because one cannot be stupid, because this is already unforgivable for this world, and in general, if you think about it, then he is the one who suffered, because he was living well. And then some child came and almost took away his peaceful life. But then he thought, what would happen if the girl suddenly came here with a dowry, maybe moved in? But a second later he dismissed this thought and said that he was the master of the mountain, and therefore how could he just move because of some girl? Suddenly a female voice asked him if he was worried, to which the beast asked again that he was worried about some girl. But then the voice replied that nothing had been said about the girl. Then, feeling a little awkward, the tiger replied that he was worried about his ginseng. In response, the voice said that it was understandable that he was worried about him, because these disgusting people would definitely resort to dirty means to get ginseng. The voice continued and said that perhaps this girl would be beaten and he would be taken away. Or perhaps, so that she would not spread rumors, I would kill her altogether. These words made the tiger a little nervous. Meanwhile, in the village, a nobleman was sitting and eating meat and rice while someone was actively calling him. The man slammed the table and shouted that he had warned them not to disturb him while he was eating, and then added that they had made him lose his appetite, and then asked what had happened there. The servant replied that the doctor uncle had sent someone to sell ginseng. The nobleman went out to look at this ginseng, and when he saw it, he thought that it was the first time he had seen a root of such size, and wondered how such a valuable thing had ended up in the hands of a child. But then he noticed that the girl had white hair and blue eyes, and suspicions crept into his head. Then, grabbing his chin, the man asked if she was a slave of one house, naming the name of the master who had served the girl in the previous village. Chelsea asked how the man knew. Then, pointing his finger at the girl, the man shouted and asked why the offering to the master of the mountain was still alive, and stated that she had definitely run away. And then he said that she had definitely stolen this ginseng, to which the girl replied that her husband had given her this ginseng so that she could sell it. But the man did not believe her, and, without stopping shouting, said that the girl was not yet old enough to get married, which meant she was definitely lying, and declared that she was a thief and a runaway, and ordered the servants to take the ginseng from her and drive her away. The servants obeyed their master, and one of them extended his hand to the girl, telling her to give him her ginseng. While the man, holding the girl's hand, tried to take the root, Chelsea screamed that he couldn't take it away because her husband gave it to her. The servant noted that despite all his efforts, the girl did not move, and wondered how this little girl could be so strong. Losing his temper, the man pushed the girl hard, and she fell to the ground. Noticing this, the nobleman said that he wanted to let the girl go if she gave him the ginseng in a friendly manner, but now it would not work, and he ordered that straw be brought. Still clutching the root in her arms, Chelsea, bursting into tears, tried to justify herself, while a servant approached her with a stick in his hand. The man raised the stick over his head with a sharp movement of his hand, intending to hit the girl, and said that now they would see how her pain receptors worked. It was already evening, and Chelsea walked barefoot on the ground, crying and saying how much it hurt, and what she should do, since her ginseng had been taken away from her. But when she returned to the place where she had parted with the tiger, she found no one there. The girl froze and called her husband, and then she started running around the area, calling out to her husband and saying that Chelsea had already returned. Suddenly she stopped in front of the forest from where voices were heard, saying how delicious it smelled like girls. Some black monsters were crawling out from behind the trees, saying how sad it was that the girl was alone and how poor she was. They got closer and closer to her and asked her about how she was probably sad and in pain, and then told her to come to them, because they would be with her and would never abandon her. Chelsea gave in to the persuasion and slowly approached the monsters. Suddenly one of them opened his mouth and shouted that he was going to rip the flesh off the girl. But suddenly something cut against this monster. As it turned out, it was a tiger who said that how dare an empty soul like this covet what belongs to him. Standing behind Chelsea, the beast raised its head and opened its mouth, in which some kind of blue energy was gathering. The girl turned to look at the tiger, and then he asked who dared to do this to her. But the girl didn't answer, she just grabbed the animal's fur. And a little later she burst into tears again, screaming loudly. Meanwhile, in the village, a nobleman threw a bag of coins on the floor in front of his servant, and said that he had done a good job, and wanted to ask something. But the servant, as if guessing the master's thoughts, said, taking the bag in his hands, that the master should not worry, because he had already put the boys on guard, which meant that if something suddenly came, he would not be able to come in. After praising the servant again, the man sent him away and stared at the ginseng, thinking how beautiful and fine it was. Leaving the nobleman's chambers, the man thought that with this money he could rest for several months, and then he thought, why not go to a restaurant to see the girls? Suddenly he saw that the gates began to crack, and some light was visible from these cracks. Suddenly the gate finally broke down and light filled the entire courtyard. At that very moment, other servants gathered in the courtyard, asking who dared to break into their master's house. Suddenly they noticed with surprise that it was their recent guest. The servant who had beaten the girl earlier asked how she dared to come back here, and then said that it was clear that she had not received enough blows then, and now she wanted to die. Suddenly a tiger came out from behind her and said that they would still see who would die today. The nobleman, hearing noise in the courtyard, came out of his chambers and shouted to ask who was making noise at night under his house. But suddenly a man flew towards him and broke the doors. The tiger, entering further and further into the yard, asked, calling them bastards, whether they dared to touch the girl. He asked if they had gathered together and beaten up a little girl, and that was all they could do, while all the men were shaking with fear. Declaring that these people were worse than trash, the tiger opened its mouth and began to collect glowing energy there. Having said that he would nobly return to them everything that they had done to the girl, the beast raised his paw, releasing his claws. But then Chelsea shouted at him to wait and held out her little hand to him. Suddenly the girl stood in front of one of the men, protecting him, causing the tiger's paw to stop halfway. Chelsea said she didn't want the tiger to kill anyone and offered to take the ginseng and go home. Hearing this, the beast stopped and scratched its head, looking away. Afterwards he called one of the servants, which made him very scared. And then the beast with a threatening face ordered him to bring ginseng. But then a nobleman appeared with ginseng on a tray. Quickly bowing before the tiger, the man said that he protected the root and served behind it so that nothing would happen, waiting for the master of the mountain to come. In response to this, the beast roared at the man not to lie to him. Continuing to bow, the nobleman closed his eyes and prayed that the tiger would not kill him. Suddenly the beast said that if it were up to him, he would eat that dirty face off him, but he wouldn't do it, and he had the girl to thank for that. These words surprised the man so much that he opened his eyes wide. And then the tiger said that the man should give him all his wealth in return, and if he kept even 1 grain of rice for himself, it would end badly for him. Shaking with fear, the nobleman ordered that all his riches be delivered to the mountain as quickly as possible. Hearing this, the tiger and Chelsea disappeared, leaving behind a blue haze. After this, the man turned grey with fear, thinking that the husband the girl had spoken of turned out to be Spencer, the owner of the mountain, and that meant she was the bride of the mountain's keeper. Waking up the next day in his cave, Spencer wondered how it all happened. He looked at the riches that had been brought to his cave and mentally mourned his quiet, cozy nest, his quiet, routine life. Chelsea, meanwhile, said she found wild raspberries, and then she tried to put the berries in the tiger's mouth while he was still in a state of shock. Having put the berries in, the girl asked with a smile on her face if it was true that these berries were tasty. Thinking that he had brought her back, but nothing had changed, the beast finally stood up. In response, Chelsea asked where he was going. Heading towards the exit of the cave, Spencer replied that he was going to get a drink of water, to which the girl replied that she wanted one too, and ran after him. The tiger and the girl walked together through the forest to a pond. Here Chelsea, tugging at the tiger's fur, says that she is tired and asks how much longer they have to go, to which the beast replies that they have come, and before their eyes a pond opens up, over which fireflies are flying. Suddenly a catfish flies out of the pond, and he says, turning to the owner of the mountain, that they haven't seen each other for a long time. In response, Spencer says that it is true, and asks how he is doing, to which the catfish replies that as soon as the tiger came, his life got better, and Chelsea meanwhile quietly laughs, thinking about what this fish is saying. Why is it so funny to her? Spencer tells the catfish to give him what he left with him, to which the fish mockingly asks if he wants to give it to his bride, to which the tiger only annoyedly replies that he should stop talking. Here the catfish takes a small oblong box out of its mouth, and then he solemnly presents it. The beast tells the girl to try to open this box. Chelsea gets to open a box, from which light immediately bursts out. Taking out what was in the box, the girl exclaims, talking about how beautiful this hairpin is. Spencer explains that the pin was carved from a peach tree that is over 1,000 years old, and that the pin has the ability to ward off evil spirits, which is why the girl must keep it with her at all times. Slightly taken aback, Chelsea asks if he really wants to give the pin to her, to which the tiger sarcastically asks if he should wear it himself. Suddenly tears appear in the girl's eyes. In a panic, the beast asks what happened to her again. Chelsea says this is the first gift she has ever received out of the blue. Thinking that this is her first gift, the girl presses it to her chest and mentally swears to take care of it. The next morning, the girl is sleeping on the tiger's fur again, still holding her new hair clip. Spencer turns to see the girl mumbling in her sleep, and then he suddenly gets up, wondering when Chelsea managed to lie down next to him, and the girl gasps and falls to the ground. Still half awake, Chelsea asks her husband if he's awake yet while drooling. The tiger tells the girl to get ready because they are going on a long journey. In response, the girl asks where they are going, to which the beast replies that even if he tells her, she still does not know, and then tells her to take as many valuables as she can. Chelsea walks over to the chest of floor and jewels and begins to pick them up, putting them into a bag. Suddenly, a female voice asks the tiger if he has to do this, to which he mentally replies that he will not get involved in her destiny. In response, the voice asks if he does not think that becoming a bride was her destiny, or is he simply still afraid of forming connections with other people. The beast replies that everything is not like that at all, and that a person must have a human destiny, and it is very different from him, an animal, and besides, it is enough for him that this voice bothers him. The voice notes that the tiger used to hate the word fate, but now he has begun to use this word often. In response to Spencer, he says that she has remained as grumpy as she was, despite the years that have passed. In response, the voice mockingly says that they say that the older you get, the wiser you become, but apparently this is all nonsense because with age you can also become dumber, to which the tiger, starting to get angry, asks her again what she just said. In response, the voice innocently says that she did not talk specifically about him, and asks why he was so angry. Then Chelsea speaks up and says that she has finished getting ready, and stands in front of the beast with a bag in her hands. Sometime later, a woman and a black tiger appear in the cave. Entering the cave, the tiger notices that there is no one there, and asks the woman if this is not where they need to go. The woman replies that this is indeed the case, this is where they need to go, to which the tiger asks why then Spencer is not here. The woman replies that perhaps it is because he is afraid of him, to which the black beast asks if she really thinks so. The woman says if it's not Tao, then why isn't Spencer in his own house? Hearing this, the tiger bursts into a malicious laugh and says that it is so, that he ran away because he was afraid of him. In response, the woman sighs and asks if he wants to come back. Lying down on a rock, the beast replies that he doesn't want to, and says that they should stay here, because sooner or later Spencer will return. And then he bursts into caustic laughter again, saying that he wants to look at that face when Spencer sees him. In response, the woman sighs again, and tells the tiger not to laugh like that. Meanwhile, an old man and a little boy with a bag on their backs are walking along the road. Suddenly, as they climb the slope, they noticed a tiger in front of them. The boy exclaims in fear, and the old man, standing in front of him and covering him with his hand, tells him to move away from here. Spencer and the man lock eyes. But then the old man notices that there is a little girl sitting on the tiger's head. The boy and the man look at this girl in surprise. Noticing these people, Chelsea greets them with a smile on her face and waves her small hand. Blushing, the boy also greets her in it and waves his hand hesitantly in response. As the tiger walks away, the boy tells his teacher that there is a girl sitting on the tiger's neck, to which the old man replies that they will watch them. Night has fallen. A deer is running through the forest and chewing grass. Suddenly a tiger attacks this deer. He successfully grabs this deer by the side with his teeth, while the other deer, seeing this, runs away in fear. Holding the deer in his mouth, Spencer thinks about why he always has to share his kill, but then calms himself down by thinking that they will soon reach the village. After taking the deer, the beast says that this is dinner, in response to which Chelsea runs up to the tiger and is surprised at how quickly the beast caught this deer. And then she says that you think that among tigers, Spencer has the most excellent hunting skills. The slightly stunned tiger replies that it was very easy, and then, scratching his nose, he says that he can get anything if the girl just says so. Then he tears off the deer's leg and gives it to the girl, telling her to eat it. In response, Chelsea says that she does not eat raw meat. Spencer is surprised by this and asks if she doesn't even know how to make a fire, to which the girl replies that she doesn't know. Suddenly, the old man they had met earlier notices that the tiger and the girl are having some trouble and says that they can share their fire with them. Chelsea thanks the old man and says that they can share some meat with them in return, to which the man replies that they would be grateful. Spencer is there, off to the side, chewing on a deer's body. Tiger thinks that the girl only had to bring fire here, and wonders what she has been doing for so long. Looking towards the people, the beast notices that Chelsea is talking to a boy, and notices how wide his smile is. The deer leg is roasted over a small fire. Chelsea looks at this and drools run down her face. Spencer scratches his cheek and asks the girl, looking away, what they were discussing for so long. Wiping away her drool with her sleeve, Chelsea replies that the boy is the same age as her, which is why they decided to be friends, and says that the boy's name is Ben. Suddenly, the girl's stomach begins to rumble loudly, and the tiger remarks out loud that the girl seems to be very hungry. Chelsea, worried and with red cheeks, replies that if the animal is hungry too, she can share with him. Spencer asks what she's talking about, because she herself is very hungry, because he can hear the whale howling in her belly. In response, the girl, a little offended, replies that the tiger has a whale in its belly. Licking his paw, the tiger says that it seems that hunger has hit the girl hard in the head, and then wonders why she is so ashamed. In response, the girl jumps up and says that everything is wrong. Spencer replies that he is not deaf, and that it is just him and her, and then asks if he can really distinguish the sound from his stomach. The girl begins to frown and puff out of anger. Suddenly she grabs the deer's leg, and shouting that the tiger is a fool, Chelsea runs away with her leg in her hands, while the animal wonders what is happening to her. As the girl runs deeper into the forest, a woman's voice sighs and asks if the tiger can't understand the girl's feelings, and then the voice asks if Spencer should follow her, because that's what's dangerous there. Wondering what he did wrong, the tiger says that the hairpin will protect her. The voice says that maybe the hairpin will protect her from evil spirits, but there are more terrible creatures in the forest, and maybe she will even get lost. In response, licking her paw, Spencer replies that then this is her destiny. Then the voice asks if fate did the same to her, to which the tiger does not answer, and then he asks why the woman cares so much about her. In response, the voice says that a tiger can't be honest with himself, to which Spencer replies that she shouldn't say stupid things. Suddenly, an old man appears right in front of the tiger and says that the beast is not a sacred animal, but just a creature that kills people. Rising from the ground, Spencer asks again. The old man says that he is from Mount Conger, and then asks the tiger that he didn't think that he didn't know about the ghost that is always next to him. As it turns out, the ghost, who was previously a man but was killed by a tiger, does not leave him, but bewitches other people and leads them to the tiger. Spencer meanwhile remembers that the warriors from Mount Conger are keenly aware of the theme of ghosts, and then he orders his ghost to come out, and a woman appears next to him. Pointing his sword at the tiger, the old man shouts that he is betting the honor of the warrior Conger, and promises to cut out the beast's throat. Spencer sighs and turns to Hannah, telling her that this is all his fault, and that she needs to figure it out herself. The man asks the beast where it went as the ghost gets closer and closer to him, and then Hannah says that she will be his opponent, and her pendant starts to glow. Then a sword begins to appear from the pendant. Raising her hand, the ghost took out a sword from her pendant. Seeing this, the old man realized that this was a necklace where you could put absolutely anything, regardless of size. The man was surprised to think that this ghost could control him. After a short silence, he asked if he could ask a question. In response, Hannah said that they say that people who learn martial arts become too self-confident, and that once the old man pulled out his sword, the conversations are over. The man frowned and said that if she said so, then so be it. And then, using the dragon art technique, which created several clones of the man, he rushed to attack, thinking that this woman had lost her human essence anyway. And now the blades almost reached the ghost's head. Suddenly, the ghost blocked the blow of the real sword behind her back. The old man was surprised and exclaimed, "How could this be?" Hannah said that since he was so rude to the girl, she should pay him back with a worthy blow. Then she swung her sword and the man was thrown back. The old man's hand holding the sword began to shake, but the ghost did not retreat, and now her sword almost reached the man's face. But the man managed to block the blow, and their swords touched, creating a flash of light. The old man struggled to hold back the attack as the swords created sparks. Using the dragon arts again, the man exposed his pendant to the blow and moved to the side. But the ghost, asking where the old man was running away from her, and without looking, immediately pointed the tip of her sword to the side. And then she struck again, which pushed the opponent back. Ben called out to his teacher in fear. Meanwhile, his teacher stood leaning on his sword, his whole body shaking. The man thought with surprise how it was possible that he was losing to some ghost. Hannah, meanwhile, came closer to the old man, and he immediately raised his head. The woman prepared to strike again, and the old man wondered if she was a ghost at all. While Hannah fought the man, Chelsea sat on a rock near a field of wild wheat and ate her meat. Suddenly someone asked her if it was tasty, which made the girl shudder. And then she turned with her cheeks full and looked angrily at the speaker. Spencer told her to go to the fire because it was cold, and he noted to himself that the girl had an appetite no worse than his. Chelsea snorted in an offended manner, didn't answer, and turned away from the tiger. Not wanting to fall for such manipulations, the tiger said that if so, he would leave here, and said goodbye, and then added that he was not very pleased, so he would quickly forget about her. The girl did not expect such a reaction at all, and turned around in surprise. And then she ran after the tiger. The beast thought that it could not be otherwise, because she was just a child. Suddenly Spencer noticed something, and his eyes widened. Chelsea, not expecting the tiger to stop, gasped and cut herself on his leg. Raising her hand to her bruised nose, she asked why the tiger had stopped. Stepping forward, he told the girl to be quiet, and then he ordered whoever was hiding here to come out. Chelsea hid behind the tiger in fear. Suddenly someone said that he would not say unnecessary words, and then he ordered to leave the girl and go away, and then said that if he did this he would spare the tiger. Spencer noted that it looked like they were entering Black Soul territory. He looked at the girl and thought that he had assumed that this would happen, but he had not expected it to happen so quickly, and he began to think about what to do. And then the tiger suddenly asked if the speaker promised that he would not touch him if he gave him the girl, and thought that first he needed to survive, while the girl looked at the tiger in surprise. The Black Soul mockingly noted that the beast knew his place, and then replied that he kept his promises, and then once again ordered him to leave the girl and disappear. The girl called out to Spencer hesitantly. The tiger looked at Chelsea and ordered her to let him go. In a panic, the girl asked why he was doing this. Was it because she was angry? And then he said that she would not do it again and asked him not to do this to her. Looking sternly at Chelsea, Spencer said he didn't want to die here with her. And then he said that he, of course, became attached to her, but not so much as to die with her. And then, with a jerk of his leg, the tiger told the girl to accept her fate. And then the beast began to leave. Suddenly a dark shadow appeared behind the girl, who laughed and said that the white-blooded one would soon die. Meanwhile, Jeanne asked the old man, pointing the sword at his face, if he understood everything now, and then said that she would not ask him to believe her, but she wanted him to know that they did not want to harm this girl. And then she removed the sword from the man's face, while he remained silent. Sighing, the old man replied that what else could he do? Even if he didn't believe, he had to believe. With a smile on her face, the ghost said that it was good that he understood everything, because there is nothing more stupid than not knowing your place. And then she asked what the man was doing here with his student, to which the old man replied that they were here for spiritual training. Hearing this, the woman said that here you can find something that you can't find anywhere else. Standing up with the broken sword in his hands, the man said that she was right, and that was why they came here, believing the rumors. In response, the woman asked what kind of rumors. The old man said that since ancient times, many people have been dying in these places. Hearing this, Hannah asked the man to continue his story. The old man said that all the corpses were without limbs, and they cut the skin of their stomachs, as if they wanted to find something there. The woman's thoughts latched onto the phrase, wanted to find. Suddenly the ghost and the old man felt something. They looked around and noticed some green smoke rising from behind the trees. Hannah guessed that something seemed to have happened. Waving his sword, the Black Soul repeated the word white-blooded, as if savoring it. And then he said that for more than 200 years now, they have been saying that there are no more of them left. Smiling, he said that in this world there was no one more fortunate than him. He reached out his hand to her. The girl looked at him with an empty gaze, and the Black Soul told her to go with him. Throwing Chelsea over his shoulder, the Black Soul went somewhere. The girl meanwhile recalled how, upon seeing her, all the boys began to shout insults and throw stones at her, and told her to leave their village. She remembered how after she looked back at them, they would run away in fear. She recalled how one day she held out her hands with a chipped bowl, asking for food. But instead of helping, they poured slop on the girl. And then they asked her how she dared to come here, and said that she was bringing bad luck to their village. She recalled how she had to sit outside in winter without warm clothes. But suddenly one day someone approached her. As it turned out, a nobleman approached her. This nobleman took her with him, and he gave her clothes that were not torn. He also gave her a warm blanket. But suddenly the woman who was in the room with her threw a pillow at her and shouted at her to go away and not to dare come near her. So the girl began to work as a servant in the house of this gentleman, where she was constantly shouted at. She recalled how one day, when she was unloading a cart, one of the servants said that if she did not finish it in the given time, then she would not see food that day. Then the girl thought that she needed to work harder so that she wouldn't get kicked out, and that she needed to be harder because she didn't look like them. Suddenly she heard some girls congratulating one of them on the fact that she had been proposed to, and that she would now have a family. Chelsea decided to watch them through the fence while the girl bragged that her future husband gave her an engagement ring. Suddenly someone called out to the girl and asked what she was doing there, and then she was beaten for being idle. Sitting on the roof at night, Chelsea thought about love, marriage, family, and imagined that the star was her husband, and then she told herself that she heard what those girls were talking about. She said, looking at the sky, that she didn't quite understand everything, but these were very beautiful words. And then she asked the stars and the moon if she too could get married, if she would have the only one who would protect her and scold others for scolding and beating her. She asked if she would have someone who would love her and do everything for her, if she would have only her husband. Thinking about this, Chelsea laughed, swinging her legs. Then one day the gentleman said that she should marry Spencer. Hearing this, the girl blushed. While doing business and remembering her future marriage, she blushed every time. Chelsea thought about what her husband would be like. She didn't want him to have a cool look. She didn't demand some angel as a husband. The girl smiled, thinking that she too would have a family, and that she would no longer be alone, and that her husband would be a tiger. Chelsea learned from one of the girls that her husband would be a tiger. This girl said that it is unknown when he will decide to eat her, his bride. Hearing this, the girl became frightened. When she was being prepared to be sent to the mountain, she was no longer happy, but thought only about the fact that she, a homeless person, was taken into a house, dressed in clean clothes, given a room, just for this moment, and therefore, in the end, she could not become a person. She was only a ghost in human form. Meanwhile, the black soul reached its refuge, and he struck the stone with his sword. Taking the knife in his hands, he said that the girl's blood and body would belong to him, and that it would be bliss. Coming closer to Chelsea, the black soul said that he would not abandon her like the tiger did. Taking her head and preparing to plunge a knife into it, he said that she should not be sad, but that she should be reborn again. And so the tip of the knife began to approach Chelsea, but she thought only about the fact that she did not hate Spencer, because meeting and being friends with him, his warm hugs, what he did for her, what he gave her, made her happy. And so the girl prepared to die with a smile on her face. But there was no knife blow, and the crippled black soul fell to the ground. As it turns out, Spencer came out of nowhere and tore his arm off. The black soul screamed furiously, cursing at the tiger, and the tiger in turn called out to Hannah, still holding his hand in his teeth. And suddenly some black smoke appeared behind the girl, and out of it came Hannah and asked Chelsea if she was okay. Turning around, the girl asked who this woman was and what was going on here. The woman replied that her name was Hannah, and that she was a ghost who never left Spencer. In response, the girl said that her husband hated her. In response to this, the ghost said that this creature was very strong and that it was probably a strategic move. And then she added that the tiger treasured the girl very much, which made her shudder a little and say that then he said that everything was not like that at all. Hiding behind the invisibility cloak, Hannah urged Chelsea to look at the beast, to look at how it was trying to protect her. And then she added that the enemy was much stronger than Spencer, while the tiger fought fiercely with the black soul. Looking at this battle, at Spencer, the girl began to remember her dreams about whether she would have the one and only. She wondered if she would have someone who would protect her and scold others for scolding her or hitting her. Remembering these questions that she asked the stars and the moon, she burst into tears. Chelsea burst into tears and said she didn't even know that, before adding that she would be more obedient from now on. Hannah didn't answer, but just looked at the girl with a smile, and then she took off her robe and began to throw it over the girl, saying that it was dangerous here, and they needed to leave, to which Chelsea tried to object. While Spencer was still fighting fiercely with the black soul, the ghost said that the tiger could not fight with full force because the girl might get hurt. Having accepted this argument to leave quite reasonably, she disappeared under her cloak, calling her husband at the end. A second later, Hannah and Chelsea seemed to have disappeared, and the tiger thought that now he could finally fight at full strength. And then he began to concentrate energy in his mouth. And then the beast shot this energy at the black soul, causing it to fly away and knocking its sword out of its hands. The black soul sensed danger in this action, but before the soul could come to its senses, Spencer slammed his head into the ground with his paw, breaking the stone. But suddenly blood fell on this muzzle, from which red steam came out, and the tiger suddenly jumped away from his opponent. Then the black soul stood up, laughing, and his hair began to fall apart. Suddenly there were rat teeth, and he said that the tiger was not bad, but still remained a pitiful animal. As it turned out, the black soul's true form was a rat, and he said that he would rip out the tiger's limbs and pull out all of his limbs. Seeing its true form, Spencer thought of it as a furless rat with blood that had turned into poison, and then called the rat a bloodthirsty creature. Suddenly, the drops of blood that had spread across the cave floor began to take shape. Seeing this, the tiger was very surprised. The rat said that the beast had not taken into account his strength, and suddenly a bunch of small rats began to form from his blood, which rushed forward with a vile squeal. The blood rats rushed in a crowd at the tiger, and their leader shouted that the tiger would not escape from him alive. Spencer then struck one of the blood rats, causing it to burst immediately. The blood of this rat got on the tiger's paw and immediately began to burn, which caused pain to the animal. Seeing this, the rat laughed and exclaimed that it was all useless. The army of blood rats charged at the tiger again, while their leader shouted that a pathetic creature like Spencer would never be able to stop him. As the rats rushed at the tiger and burst, leaving behind their burning blood, the rat screamed that the beast would not escape from the rats made from his blood, and that the tiger should die a miserable death, as was destined for him. After some time, the tiger was covered in blood, which is why he began to become paralyzed. While the blood rats continued to mercilessly pounce on the tiger's leg, Spencer thought about how things could have been different if she had been here now. Suddenly the beast cried out that it was in pain. The rat noticed that the tiger had stumbled and was open to attack, and then he, shouting that he was caught, kicked Spencer in the face. From this blow the tiger flew back and hit the rock behind him. The rat screamed for the tiger to die slowly and painfully, and then a bunch of bloody rats pounced on the beast. Crushed by these rats, Spencer thought only that he had to endure it a little longer, and then he pushed away all these rats, concentrating energy in his mouth. But still, all these attacks did not pass without a trace, and the beast was already pretty battered, and vapors of this poisonous blood were coming from it. Chris was surprised to note that he was still bravely going against his attacks, and trying to run like a dog in water. Afterwards he pulled out his huge claws, and said that he would do him the honor of finishing him off himself. Calling his opponent a dirty rat, Spencer said he talked too much and for too long. Suddenly, Hannah attacked the rat from behind with a sword, and with a sharp movement of the sword, she made a deep cut on the enemy's neck, causing blood to flow out like a fountain. The woman told the rat that he was too reckless. Meanwhile, the black soul shook its head in panic, making grunting and gurgling sounds. Spencer said that he was taking too long to die, and indignantly told him to die already. Clutching the wound on his neck with his paw, the rat began calling his opponents small creatures, and then said that they dared to touch his body. Thinking that there would be no second chance, the tiger raised his paw, preparing to attack, and used the furious fist technique, causing his paw to glow with blue fire. And then the beast rushed at the enemy, who was discouraged by this, and so, when the tiger's paw was almost at the opponent's face, he used the furious fist technique. Rat, a second before that blow tore his head into pieces, screamed that he hated that damn tiger. The lower part of the rat's body, still intact, fell to the ground, while the edges of the wound glowed with blue lights. The blue fire slowly but surely burned the body of the scythe, and then this fire flared up and engulfed the entire remaining body of the black soul. Meanwhile, dawn was already breaking outside. As he left the cave, Spencer breathed a sigh of relief and said that he almost died there. And when he came out of the cave, he noticed with surprise that it was already light. Hannah, holding the rat's sword and his eyes in her hands, decided to draw her tiger's attention to what interesting things they were able to obtain, and then said that they would be very useful to them in the future. Tiger asked where Chelsea was now, to which the ghost replied that she took her to an old man in the village and told them to go to the village. Then she said that if the beast suddenly died, then she would also lose her power, and if that happened, then all these creatures would attack the girl. Tiger frowned at the ghost and said nothing while she smiled innocently. And then Spencer admitted that it was true, and wondered what kind of feeling had awakened in him. Hannah then suggested that they go to the girl, to which the tiger only chuckled thoughtfully. Spencer thought that as soon as he left the mountain, this happened immediately, and this would happen again. And with such strength, he was not sure that he could protect the girl, but by killing this monster, he received an eye with the ability to transform, and wondered if this was an accident. Looking at the eyes, he thought that if he were to transform into a human, he would be able to use the sword he had received, and would be able to fight stronger opponents. He also noticed that he would finally be able to use the technique that he had been unable to master for so long, flame blue flower. And he said out loud that before they went to Chelsea, he had some things to sort out. And then the tiger decided for himself that he should transform into a human. Meanwhile, the old man was walking with two children. Chelsea asked how far they still had to go, and then began to worry that her husband could not catch up with her. Turning around, the man said that the village was already behind the mountain, and said that they would wait for the tiger there. Suddenly Ben told Chelsea that the tiger could not be her husband. Then the girl, screaming and pulling the boy's hair, asked what he was talking about, and then said that if she said that the tiger was her husband, then he was her husband. Then she let the boy go, and said that if he told her to do something again, he would get into trouble, to which the boy replied, holding his head and crouching down on the ground, that he understood everything. Suddenly, a man in a hat turned to the old man and asked who it was. The man in the hat asked the old man, while his carriage was riding alongside, if he was Joshua from Congo, and the old man asked if it was Harvard. And then, folding his hands in a welcoming gesture, the man said that he was expressing his respect to the senior student, to which the latter replied that there was no need for such formalities. Harvard said it had been 10 years since he left Congo. The old man replied with a smile on his face that people from there will always remain family. The man suggested to the old man and the children that if they were heading in the same direction, they should go together, to which Joshua happily agreed. Meanwhile, something was happening on Mount Wulong while the sky was covered with clouds. One boar, drooling, shouted that their leader must make a decision because the number of people was growing. Another boar shouted that since there are more people, there are more animals that become food for them. And then they all shouted together, looking at the chief who had a tree growing on his back, that this was their family's business. And then they asked about who would take care of Mount Udun if their leader was gone. The boar chief thought about how he wanted to leave this place in peace, but there was no one to protect these helpless ones, and it would be too selfish to abandon them like this. Suddenly a raven flew up to the leader and whispered something in his ear. Then someone said for the boars to disperse, and a red paw stepped onto the land of the boars. The tiger came closer and closer to the leader until he did not open his eyes. Spencer noted out loud that this was their first meeting in 30 years. The chief of the boars said that he hardly came to get even for the past, and asked what had suddenly happened to the keeper of the mountain. Thinking about how petty this boar was, the tiger asked why he suddenly started feeling nostalgic, and then said that he came to find the flame flower. The boar's thoughts caught on the phrase, flame flower, and he asked himself why the keeper needed this valuable medicinal herb. The chief said that he had this flower, and the tiger thought that he doubted that he had it, but still he had it. Then the boar said that the tiger must do him a favor, and if he refused, he would not take even a single stone from this mountain. Spencer asked again about the favor. The chief said that if the tiger was the one who defeated that bloodthirsty rat, then it would not be difficult for him. The beast reluctantly agreed and asked what he wanted to ask for. Squinting slyly, the boar said that it was not difficult at all, and then added that he just needed to follow his son and help him. Some time later, many wild boars began to descend from the mountain. The tiger was walking somewhere with them. Hannah noted that there were a lot of wild boars here, and then asked if they had accidentally fooled the tiger. Spencer replied that there was nothing to be done. He couldn't fight all these pigs alone, and the main thing was that he got this flower. And then he added that they would see what would happen, and if something unexpected happened, they would run away. The son of the boar chief turned to the crowd and said that they had arrived, and then added that there would soon be a signal, and ordered them to wait. Spencer remembered that his son's name was Walter, and then asked his son if it was time for him to tell him what this was all about. Walter told them not to worry, as they would be with them, but then added that they should know that they were putting their lives on the line. Suddenly a raven flew from above, and the tiger and the boar quickly looked up. The chieftain's son noticed their target appear on the horizon, and they quietly peered out to watch the approaching carriage. The tiger noticed that these were human carts, and doubts crept into his head. Taking a closer look, Spencer noticed that these carts were guarded by Taoists, that is, warriors with spiritual powers. Noticing this, he asked Walter if they really wanted to rob the things that the Taoists were guarding, and then said that the boars were not only rumored to be fools. Walter replied that that was why he said they were putting their lives on the line, and then he said that their target was the sphere of increase that the Taoists carried in their carts. Spencer was very surprised to hear that they wanted to steal the enlargement ball, because it is a potion that can increase the territory, something that many people dream of. The stunned tiger said that they had all gone crazy. Suddenly he said that he was leaving, to which the chieftain's son replied that they had already made a deal, in response to which the tiger asked what kind of wise man would bet his life on this. Walter said that it was too late to wash his hands and that there was no way out of it. Meanwhile, the leader of the boars stood on the top of the mountain. Suddenly he assumed that the operation had already begun, and then he thought about how this matter would determine whether they would be able to cope with the consequences. And then he assumed that, regardless of whether they take this ball or not, it is unlikely that people will sit idly by. Rather, they will go and attack them in response. I thought that these little people would come not only for them, but also for their territory, and their clan would be defeated and disappear. Suddenly Walter shouted that everything would have happened like this if Spencer hadn't come. In response to this, all the other boars began to praise the tiger. Shouting that they were fighting for Spencer, many boars began running down the mountainside to meet the crew. The Taoists noticed the approach of a herd of boars and shouted that they were being attacked by the creatures and that everyone else should prepare for the attack. Meanwhile, the tiger was still standing on the dais, while one of the Taoists shouted for everyone else to protect the carts. Suddenly, this same Taoist noticed a tiger standing on a hill and said that it was Spencer, the guardian of the mountain, and suggested that he was the leader of these boars. And then the same man shouted that they had to kill him, and in response the tiger shouted, having figured out the plan of the boar leader, that he was a bastard old man. Meanwhile, the chief, rejoicing and mocking Spencer, said that now all the enemies would be aimed at him, and that he should try to dodge their attacks, and then laughed loudly. Meanwhile, the Taoists fought fiercely with the boars, cutting their bodies with swords. The already out-of-breath warrior noticed that there was no end to these boars, while a pile of boar corpses lay next to him. A whole mountain had already formed from the corpses of the boars killed by the Taoists, but the boars still did not stop their advance. Hannah noticed that the boar chief had set them up, and then asked Spencer what they would do, and then suggested that they could go back to the mountain right away. The tiger replied irritably that this was exactly what their opponents were after, and he could not afford to give them what they wanted. And then, preparing to enter the battle, he told the ghost that their opponents were now Taoists, and therefore she must be more careful. Covering herself with her invisibility cloak, Hannah replied that she understood. Meanwhile, a gentleman sitting in one of the carts noticed that the warriors outside still could not calm down. As it turned out, it was Harvard, who said he would go there alone and then ordered Joshua to stay inside with his students. Meanwhile, Ben and Chelsea were sitting at the table eating, and an old man was sitting next to them. As soon as one of the Taoists noticed that his master had left, he told him that he could rest, because they could handle it themselves, in response to which Harvard only dismissively hissed. While the Taoists were still chopping the boars into pieces, the man asked what was going on, and then he took out a small bell from his sleeve. And then he began to raise his hand with this bell up and ring it, and suddenly a huge wave of force came from the master, which began to push the boars away. As the boars flew back, Spencer, recognizing the sound, remembered something. Noticing this technique, the tiger realized that this gentleman was the leader of these Taoists. Suddenly, Harvard noticed something below and looked up. Saying that there was a big animal in there, the man turned to Spencer, causing him to cower in fear. Taking a talisman out of his sleeve, the gentleman said with a sinister smile on his face that this tiger would make a good skin. And then he used the talisman, and some things that looked like tree branches flew out of it. Luckily, Spencer managed to dodge this attack, and the branch did not hit him. The man frowned, surprised to think that this dirty animal had managed to dodge. Looking at the branch next to him, the tiger thought that if this thing had hit him, he would have died already. The beast noted that this was, without a doubt or exaggeration, a powerful spiritual force and a strong blow to whom. Looking at the master, who took out even more talismans from his sleeve, the tiger concluded that he was a very skilled fighter. The man gestured with his hand, saying that the beast would definitely not be able to avoid this, and his eyes turned orange. Using the 1,000-strike power technique, the man used the talismans, which now stood in a semicircle above him, and branches appeared from them, which now headed towards the tiger at great speed. The tiger did not expect such an attack at all. Because he did not expect this, he was unable to dodge this attack, and several branches caught up with him, but were unable to pierce him as the tiger deftly ran away from them. The man laughed evilly, saying that if the tiger stood there even for a second, his life would end. Continuing to mock the tiger, the master noticed something was wrong. As it turned out, Spencer was quite successful in dodging these branches, which in turn hit either the boars or the ground. Harvard frowned even more, calling the tiger a sneaky cat. Suddenly he screamed that he didn't give a damn about his skin. Now he would turn him into mincemeat, and then his eyes turned bright yellow, and the bell glowed even brighter. Suddenly branches began to emerge from the ground around the tiger, bending towards him at the ends. Soon these branches began to come even closer together, and become entangled, forming a cocoon around the beast. But Spencer didn't despair, and used his furious claw technique, causing his paw to glow with blue fire. By using this technique, the tiger was able to burn his wooden cocoon with his blue fire. Suddenly, at the same time, all the Taoists and all the boars stared at this bright blue flash. Meanwhile, a tiger began to approach them, its eyes glowing with an angry red light, and sticks sticking out of its back. Harvard wondered in bewilderment how this beast could have survived his most powerful attack. And then he thought about how an animal could have such incredible strength. Spencer thought about how much he didn't want to use this technique, and then asked Hannah if she had found what they needed. A second later, the ghost appeared next to the tiger, saying that she had found everything. And then she worriedly asked when he managed to get so badly hurt, and if everything was okay with him. Spencer replied that he was dying. Meanwhile, the man shouted that the tiger's strength was running out, which meant that he was now definitely at the very bottom, and then laughed evilly. The woman said that they had already gotten what they wanted, and suggested that they leave here, and then covered the tiger with her invisibility cloak. The gentleman noticed with surprise that this was the power of invisibility, and then, looking at where the woman and the tiger had stood just a second ago, he shouted and asked where they had gone. One of the Taoists ran up to the master and said that they had a problem, while he stared angrily at the now empty space. The Taoist said that their ball was missing, and now Harvard responded with a look, and turned to the man in annoyance and surprise. He wanted to ask what he was talking about, but he couldn't finish speaking because he began to choke on his own blood. The man's disciple asked him worriedly if he was okay, to which he held out his hand in an attempt to stop the Taoist, and said that he was not to be worried about, while he himself crouched closer to the ground and spat out blood, then added that he was simply weak. Spitting out blood, the gentleman thought that if he lost the ball that night, he would be expelled from the community. Suddenly he remembered Hannah, who used the power of invisibility before his eyes. Starting to rise from the ground, Harvard ordered everyone to start looking for the thief who stole their ball, to which the student replied that there were only 3 of them left, and they would not be able to deal with Spencer. In response, the man angrily shouted that they had seen how weak the tiger had become after his attack, since he had barely survived it, and then said that while he was recovering, 1 Taoist should stay with him, and the other 2 should go after the beast. And then he ordered them not to let him out of their sight, and at the same time a small handle opened the carriage door. Chelsea looked out of the carriage with concern, and asked if they were talking about her husband now. Meanwhile, Spencer and Hannah reached the flower field, and the tiger said that the Taoists must be in trouble there. And then he said he wanted to see the look on Harvard's face, and after he thought about it, he said it even made him feel good, and he started laughing. The ghost shouted, saying that now was not the time for laughter, and that the tiger needed to think about himself. The woman noticed that the animal was getting worse and worse, and wondered what had happened. Suddenly Spencer fell to the ground, and the woman called his name in concern. Having fallen to the ground, the tiger suddenly began to vomit blood. Noticing this, Hannah said that this would not do, and that she needed to get those sticks out of the tiger's body, to which he, groaning a little, told her to do it. Suddenly Spencer's scream shook the entire forest. Taking one of the sticks out of the tiger's back, the woman noticed something bad about it, while the tiger meanwhile angrily muttered that he should have been warned before taking out this stick. Then the ghost said that these sticks had taken root in the body of the beast, and her hand shook slightly with fear. Sweating and emitting steam, the tiger told the woman to continue. The ghost tried to object, saying that he was already bleeding heavily, to which Spencer replied that if he waited any longer, those branches would suck all the blood out of him, and if she got them, it would be better than that slow and painful death. However, these arguments did not seem too convincing to Hannah, and she again found herself objecting, to which the tiger said that she knew he could handle it. And then again, but more insistently, he ordered her to pull out these branches. After a slight hesitation, the woman nevertheless took hold of one of the sticks, and, saying that it would be very painful, began to pull them out of the animal's body. Meanwhile, the Taoists were following Spencer and Hannah. Suddenly one of the Taoists dropped to the ground and said that they had found this tiger. The other noticed that this tiger was very badly injured. And then this same Taoist told another to be careful, even though this tiger was badly wounded. In response, the first Taoist said that he knew what the mountain master's strength was, so he was sure that he was now dying. The first Taoist rose from the ground and said that the ghost next to the tiger had priceless power, and if they took this power away from her and returned the ball, they would be promoted. Meanwhile, Hannah had removed all the sticks from Spencer's body, and then she thought that even though she had gotten all the sticks, the tiger had lost consciousness, because he had lost a lot of blood, and then she decided that she still had to wake the beast up. Suddenly, someone's voice sounded from behind the ghost, asking who it was, to which the woman immediately turned around. The two Taoists finally reached the tiger, and one of them said that although the tiger was breathing, he was sure that these were its last breaths, and Hannah, screaming, asked how they found it. and then she took out a sword from her necklace. Attacking the ghost, the Taoist defiantly asked if she really wanted to protect her master. Shouting that this was all very funny, the Taoists pounced on Hannah, their swords pointing straight at her. Meanwhile, Harvard was in some dark space and was meditating while some blue vapors were coming out of it. Exhaling blue smoke, the man thought that he had restored his strength to the 3rd level. And then he decided that this was enough to return to the fight. The Taoist, who had been ordered to stay by the master's side, was now guarding the carriage, and he lamented that they were being attacked not even by people, but by some kind of animals, and then remarked that it wasn't even funny. Suddenly something passed the crew window, and some bright flash came out from there. As it turned out, it was Harvard, who was thinking that although he had not yet fully recovered his strength, there would be assistance next to him, and then, heading straight to the tiger, he remembered the stone on the ghost's neck, and assumed that it was most likely priceless. And then, with a greedy smile on his face, he suggested that there were many other valuables in this stone. Anticipating what would happen next, Harvard thought that if he thought of a strong tiger and a ghost who had power over that stone, then he would be the richest man. Sometime later, the man finally noticed the body of a tiger lying in a flower field. The man noticed with delight that his prey was lying right before his eyes. Meanwhile, in the carriage where Joshua, Ben, and Chelsea were sitting, there was some kind of commotion, and the boy told the teacher that the girl had disappeared. In response, the man asked again, and the boy replied that she said that she was going to pee in the bushes, but after that he did not see her. Going outside, the old man quietly cursed and exclaimed that it was very dangerous in the mountains. Meanwhile, Chelsea was walking somewhere through the forest up the mountain. Sweating a little from the climb, she thought about how she was sure those people were talking about her husband, and although she didn't know why they fought, she knew for sure that her husband had come for her. So the girl decided that now she would go to him. It was already getting dark, and Spencer was still lying in the flower field, and the flowers were covered in his blood. And Harvard came closer to the tiger's body. The man grinned and assumed that the animal had died while pulling out its branches, then thought that it was obvious and lamented how boring it was. Looking to the side, the Taoist said that since the tiger died, it meant that the ghost had also evaporated, which meant that her little thing was somewhere here, and it had to be found. After examining the area around the tiger's body, the man was surprised to note that the necklace he was looking for was nowhere to be found. Starting to shake with anger, Harvard assumed that one of his students had already taken the necklace. The man swore loudly, and in a fit of anger, using the talisman, struck the tiger on the neck. The blow sent Spencer's head flying off his body and rolling across the ground. The man thought furiously about how this bastard dared to steal his thing. And then, assuming that this Taoist could not have run far, Harvard set off in a bright flash to look for him. Some time later, someone approached the tiger's head. As it turned out, it was Chelsea who took Spencer's head in her hands. And then she smiled weakly and turned to her husband. Bringing the head back to the body, she asked if he had decided to play a joke on her again. The girl said that she would not let herself be deceived again. After attaching the head to the body, Chelsea sat down next to him and told the tiger to stop teasing him and get up quickly. But then the head fell off the body again, and she rolled across the flower field. The girl stared at the head in surprise, and then she picked it up again, saying again that she had asked him to stop making these jokes. Chelsea reattached the head to the body and said that Spencer had done a good job and should stand up. But the beast did not get up, and his head fell off again. Then the girl burst into tears. And then she burst into loud sobs near the lifeless body of the tiger. Meanwhile, Hannah was carrying Spencer on her shoulder, saying how heavy he was. Suddenly, she dropped it on the ground. The blow caused the tiger to suddenly open its eyes. The beast rose abruptly and wondered when he had managed to pass out, and the ghost was glad that he finally woke up. Suddenly, Spencer noticed something strange about the woman. As it turned out, Hannah was slowly evaporating. A few hours earlier, she had fought with 2 Taoists. The sword swings flickered in the air like a bright flash. One of the Taoists was amazed at the power of this ghost, and replied that at this rate they would lose. Suddenly an idea came to his mind, and then he pulled 2 knives out of his sleeve. And saying that if the tiger dies, the ghost will also die, the man threw these 2 knives into the tiger's body. And now there was a second left, and these knives would plunge into Spencer's head, killing him. But suddenly Hannah runs up and protects the beast with her body, and the knives end up in her back. The Taoist who launched the knives notes that sacrificing herself to save her master is the only way for her to survive. Suddenly the ghost says that she has been messing with them for too long and screams to end it all. Turning to Spencer, she says that he's going to be in a little pain now. and then a huge amount of purple smoke starts to come out of Hannah. One of the Taoists looks at this with bewilderment. The other one, angry, asks if she really decided to use illusions, and then says that she is not his equal and attacks her with a sword. The first Taoist tries to stop his comrade. Suddenly the ghost's eyes light up with a bright flash.